to our security analyst, Yaakov Lapin, who is joining us in the studio. All right, so I just kind of want to talk about the direct impact that we saw yesterday in the Jerusalem area. Obviously, there haven't been that many direct ballistic missile impacts, but every time they do happen, especially this far into the war, I mean, we're now over a month in, there's a lot of fears about how Israel's defense system is keeping up with these near daily attacks. What is the situation right now? Are there any concerns about a lack of interceptors? What do we know?
Well, we know that the Iranians are still firing in the single digits every day. So it's a relatively, compared to what was expected, it's still lower, much lower than what they were preparing for. And look, it's clear that the Israeli air defense array is carefully selecting its interceptors because they want to pace themselves for the long run. So every alert that comes in, the system will recommend an interceptor. And, you know, there are various guidelines about how to intercept. They obviously don't reveal that. They don't share that with us, the exact calculations. But they're still talking about a very high interception rate overall, over 90%. And still saying that those who listen to the Home Front Command warnings and act accordingly will very, very likely be safe. So because we're not seeing, as you said, very many direct impacts, those guidelines are still very much working. I think it's also worth looking at what's happening in Iran itself, because part of the effort against this threat is happening in Iran.
Yeah,
so,
we're going to get to that shortly.
Okay, so I mean, if we have time now, I can just tell you that, you know, what we heard this morning from the IDF is that the Israeli Air Force is currently focused on three kinds of targets in Iran.
Right.
The first are those missile launchers, and that's real-time intelligence. Those are opportunities that come up. They're immediately sent to the aircraft that are already in the air over Iran, and they're targeted. So that hunt is going on constantly. And the other two targets are no less interesting families of targets. One is the nuclear. We had some very interesting strikes on the Arak missile plutonium preparation site where they make plutonium. That site was reactivated after it was hit back in June. And the intelligence showed that it had to be hit again during this war, so that was hit. And also we saw a uranium enrichment site in Yazd, a city called Yazd in Iran, struck. So that's very interesting. And the third family of targets is the missile production industries. So the IDF is telling us this morning that there has been significant progress in the destruction of all of those sites. Now, why is that significant? Because they're saying that leaves long-lasting impact. It's much longer lasting than just hitting the launcher. It's the entire apparatus that creates the launchers and the missiles are going to be destroyed. So I think if we zoom out, we're seeing very, very significant damage to the Iranian missile capability.
Right, and we're actually going to speak about that right now. The IDF says that it is close to finishing one of its biggest objectives in this war, and that is taking out Iran's military production capabilities. Israeli officials now estimate that they've already hit around 70% of Iran's key military industry sites and could reach up to 90% within days, targeting everything from missile production to air defenses and naval weapons systems. Now, overnight strikes hit Tehran again, including the headquarters responsible for developing Iran's naval weapons and vessels. And what the military says is yet another blow to the regime's capabilities. At the same time, Washington is signaling this campaign may not last much longer. Vice President J.D. Vance says that the U.S. will continue the fight for a little while longer with the goal of making sure Iran is, in his words, neutered for the long term. So, Yaakov, want to turn back to you on this. Obviously, you know, these numbers, they sound great. But again, Israelis are still continuing to see, daily launches from Iran targeting civilian city centers. What do you make of this? And ultimately, are the numbers that are coming out right now perhaps an attempt to try to end this war with the ability to say this has been successful even without the fall of the regime, at least on the part of the Israelis, since there is so much of a public perception and hope that that is what this is going to lead to?
Well, I think that's an interesting question, Natasha, because, you know, from the day that this war began, what we were hearing from the IDF, we were not hearing about regime change as an official goal. They were saying, if you want to talk about regime change, speak to the government. The government is talking about regime change. The IDF didn't talk about that. What it was talking about is rolling back existential threats. Now, there's a real gap in public expectations and what the military expected going into this. So, the military is not surprised one iota that we are still getting missiles. Their expectation was that the Iranians not only would be firing missiles, but would be firing even more missiles than what they're doing, because the Iranians are very good at asymmetric warfare. What does that mean? It means that even if most of their systems are destroyed, they're decentralized enough and dispersed enough to keep the fire going. What the IDF is looking at is the volume. It's in the single digits. It's not large volleys, and it's gradually getting smaller and smaller with time. So for them, as far as the IDF is concerned, this is a big achievement. There's been a real gap in the ability to communicate this expectation to the public. So the public, as you say, still sees missiles coming in, and it's been a long war.
Well, I mean, and when there are no home front command guidelines changing and schools still remain closed, and then you hear these numbers, I think there's a large dissonance here for the average Israeli. The IDF says that it's nearing 90% of Iran's key military production sites. I mean, how significant is that in terms of long-term impact on Iran's capability? Let's say this war ends tomorrow. What does that mean for the next couple of years?
It's extremely significant because the Iranians spent hundreds of billions of dollars building up these capabilities over decades. And now, let's say the war ends tomorrow, what they'll have to do is every dollar that they start making, if they are allowed to start making money again from energy exports, and if the regime survives, of course, they're going to be in a major dilemma. Is that dollar going to go to recreating these capabilities, in which case Israel will be monitoring and would likely destroy them all over again? Or do they spend that dollar on social programs, on food, on fuel, the things that the Iranian people were already running out of and what got them out into the streets even before this war? Even before this war, the Iranian economy was in tatter. So what situation is that regime in now? Now, add to that, we had a report in Iran International that the president of Iran is extremely disturbed by the state of the Iranian economy, told Ahmed Vahidi, the commander of the IRGC, that within 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the Iranian economy is going to collapse. So the Iranians want to signal this, image of strength. They can keep going forever, keep fighting forever. Right. Their regime is facing existential dilemmas, even just at the economic level. In terms of operationally, this is what makes the difference between just hitting the launcher, as I said, and hitting the factories that makes the launchers. These factories it took years to build and develop, and now they're destroyed. And every time they're going to start rebuilding them, right, Israel will be able to see it. So I think actually the situation of the regime is very, very bad going forward.
All right, we're going to turn to the north now. An IDF soldier from the